An orphaned boy cleans a stranger's grave every day. When they discover who she was, everything changes. A light rain fell on the municipal cemetery of Ribeirão das Flores when little Miguel, just 9 years old, pushed open the rusty gate with both hands. The sound echoed among the tombstones like an ancient groan. It was Saturday morning, and while other children ran through the streets with kites and balls, he carried a bucket of water in one hand and a worn-out rag in the other. Miguel was known there. The gravediggers saw him every week, always at the same time, always with the same destination, a forgotten grave in the most remote corner of the cemetery where no one else went. The tombstone was simple, without flowers, without a name lovingly engraved. Just an inscription worn by time: Helena Cardoso, 1952-2019. Rest in peace. Nobody knew who Helena was. Nobody asked. But Miguel knew, or thought he knew. He knelt before the cold stone and began to rub the surface carefully, as if cleaning something precious. His small hands trembled slightly, not from cold, but from an emotion he could hardly name. As he cleaned, he whispered softly, as if conversing with someone invisible. "Hi, Mrs. Helena. I brought clean water today. The rain helped, but the moss was coming back. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." Miguel had no mother. He had no father. He lived in a municipal shelter 3 blocks away, where he shared a room with 6 other boys. No one visited him, no one asked about him, but every week, without fail, he came to that grave, and he talked, and he cleaned, and he cared for it. Please, if you enjoyed this story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any exciting stories that could change the way you see the world. The other boys at the shelter teased him. "Are you going to talk to the dead again, Miguel? Are you turning into a ghost too?" But he didn't care, or pretended not to care. Deep down, that grave was the only place where he felt he belonged to someone, even if it was a stranger. It was on one of those Saturdays while pulling weeds around the gravestone that Miguel heard footsteps behind him. He turned around startled and saw Sir Joaquim, the oldest gravedigger in the cemetery, standing a few meters away, watching him with an expression that mixed surprise and something that seemed recognition. "Boy," said Joaquim in a hoarse voice, "how long have you been coming here?" Miguel shrugged. "About 2 years, I think, since I arrived at the shelter." "And why? Who is this woman to you?" Miguel lowered his eyes. "I don't know, but when I first got here, I was lost. I was running away from a boy who wanted to hit me. I ran in and ended up here. I saw this tombstone and I felt that she was alone, just like me." He paused, his voice choked with emotion. "Then I thought, if I take care of her, maybe someone will take care of me too, even if it's just God watching from above." Joaquim remained silent. Then, slowly, he took off his dirty cap and scratched his grey head. "Did you know that this woman had no family? She died alone. No one claimed the body. The city hall buried her here. To this day, you are the only person who visits this grave." Miguel felt a tightness in his chest. "So she was just like me." "She was," Joaquim confirmed. And then he added, almost as if speaking to himself, "But I think she was more than that." In the days that followed, Joaquim began to observe Miguel more closely. There was something about that boy that bothered him, not in a bad way, but in a strange way, like an itch in his memory that he couldn't scratch. Those dark eyes, that quiet and determined manner, that stubbornness in caring for someone that no one else remembered. If you're enjoying this, leave a like now and turn on notifications to receive our next stories. You won't want to miss what happens next. One night, unable to sleep, Joaquim decided to do something he hadn't done in years. He went to the cemetery's administration archives. There, in dusty folders and old filing cabinets, he searched for Helena Cardoso's record. What he found made his heart race. Helena had left a letter that had never been opened because there was no recipient. Joaquim picked up the yellowed envelope with trembling hands and, under the dim light of a lamp, began to read. "If anyone is reading this, it's because God wanted me not to die completely forgotten. My name is Helena Cardoso. I was a mother once. I had a son at 18, but I was too young, too scared, too poor. I couldn't raise him. I gave him up for adoption when he was only 3 months old. I never knew what happened to him, but I carried this pain every day of my life. If by chance my son or any descendant of mine ever comes here, know this. I never stopped loving. I never stopped regretting. I left a small inheritance kept in a safe at the central bank of Ribeirão das Flores, hoping that one day someone of my blood would claim it. May God forgive me, and may he, wherever he is, be happy." Joaquim dropped the letter on the table. His hands were trembling. He needed to know more. The next day he went straight to the municipal shelter. The principal, Mrs. Aparecida, greeted him with suspicion. "What does a gravedigger want with our boys?" "I want to know about Miguel. Who are his parents? Where did he come from?" Aparecida crossed her arms. "I can't give you that information like that, Mr. Joaquim. It's confidential." "I need to know," Joaquim insisted, his voice louder than he intended. "That boy may be entitled to an inheritance. He may have a family. He may have a future." Aparecida narrowed her eyes, but something in the old gravedigger's despair made her recoil. She opened a drawer, took out a thin folder and began to read. Miguel Augusto, abandoned at 3 months old on the doorstep of a police station. No record of mother or father, no original birth certificate. He was registered by the state. He grew up in foster homes until he arrived here. 3 months, Joaquim murmured. His heart pounded like a drum. And the date? When was he abandoned? March 2015. Joaquim did the math in his head. Helena died in 2019. Miguel was 9 years old now. He had been abandoned at 3 months old, in 2015. The dates matched. Everything matched. Where was he found? Joaquim asked, almost breathless. At the police station in Villa Esperanza, on the other side of town. Joaquim left there with trembling legs. The next day he went to the bank. He spoke with managers, showed them the letter, explained the situation. He asked for a DNA test. It was a long, bureaucratic and desperate process. But Joaquim didn't give up. And Miguel continued every week, cleaning that grave. Leave a like if you were moved by this story. Share it with someone who needs to believe that miracles happen. 2 months later, the results arrived. Joaquim was sitting in the principal's office when the envelope was opened. Aparecida read it silently. Then, slowly, she raised her eyes, and there were tears in them. "It's him," she whispered. "Miguel is Helena Cardoso's grandson." Joaquim covered his face with his hands. He cried like he hadn't cried in decades. That boy, who was tending to a grave without knowing why, was, in fact, tending to his own grandmother. Blood called. The soul recognized. Even without knowing it, love had guided that boy there. They decided to tell Miguel one Saturday afternoon, right there in the cemetery. Joaquim, Aparecida, a lawyer, and a social worker waited for the boy at the gate. When Miguel arrived with his bucket and cloth, he saw the group and stopped, startled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No, son," said Aparecida, her voice choked with emotion. "You did everything right." They took Miguel to Helena's grave. And there, before that tombstone he had cleaned so many times, they told the truth. They told him about the letter, about the inheritance, about the DNA, about the miracle of a boy who, guided only by his heart, had found the family he never knew. Miguel listened to everything in silence. Then, slowly, he knelt before the tombstone, placed his hand on the cold stone, and whispered, "Hi, Grandma. I didn't know it was you, but I think my heart knew." And as tears streamed down his dirt-stained face, he finally understood. He had never been alone. Helena's love, even after death, had guided him. And now he had a name. He had a story. He had a grandmother. Helena's inheritance was transferred to Miguel. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to ensure he had an education, support, and a future. Joaquim became his legal guardian, and every Saturday, without fail, the two went to the cemetery together. They cleaned the grave. They brought flowers, and they talked to Helena. Because now Miguel knew he wasn't just an orphan boy, he was the grandson of a woman who, even in death, didn't abandon him. And that love, silent and eternal, changed everything. A poor cleaning lady found a crying baby in the mansion. What she did changed everything forever. Claudia never imagined that her life could change in a single second. But that's exactly what happened on a Tuesday in March, when she entered the Almeida mansion for another day of work and heard a cry that chilled her blood. It wasn't just any cry. It was the kind of sound that pierces the chest, that makes the whole body tremble. A desperate, high-pitched, muffled scream as if life was slipping away with each tear. Claudia dropped the bucket of cleaning supplies in the entryway and ran upstairs, her heart pounding against her ribs. The crying was coming from the baby's room. She opened the door so forcefully that the doorknob hit the wall, and there in the hand-carved fine wood crib lay Lorenzo, 3 months old, his face red, swollen, contorted in an expression that seemed like pure pain. He cried so hard that his tiny body trembled. Claudia approached, touched his forehead. It was burning. "Oh my God! Oh my God, what's happening to you?" She picked up the baby in her arms, and he clung to her like someone drowning who finds a piece of wood in the middle of the ocean. Claudia ran downstairs shouting her boss's name. "Mrs. Vittoria! Mrs. Vittoria!" Silence. She crossed the living room, the kitchen, the conservatory. Nobody. The mansion was empty. Vittoria Almeida had gone out to a charity luncheon, as she always did on Tuesdays, and her husband Augusto was away on a business trip in São Paulo. The nanny had quit the previous week. There was nobody, only Claudia, and that baby who seemed to be dying in her arms. She ran back to the room, grabbed her boss's cell phone from the dresser. Vittoria always forgot her phone at home, and dialed the emergency number. The call dropped. She tried again. It dropped again. The mansion's phone company was down. Lorenzo was crying. He was crying so much that he started to choke. His lips turned purple. His little eyes rolled back. If you're feeling this kind of anxiety, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will leave you breathless. Claudia panicked. She couldn't wait. She couldn't waste any time. She grabbed her boss's car keys. Absurd, she knew. She could be fired. She could be arrested. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Only that baby. She put Lorenzo in the back seat, improvised a seatbelt with the shawl she carried in her bag, and sped off. She drove poorly, was sweating profusely, and prayed aloud. "Jesus, Mary, Joseph, don't let this boy die. Don't let him." The hospital was 20 minutes away. Claudia made the journey in 12. She entered the emergency room screaming, with the unconscious baby in her arms. A nurse ran to her, took Lorenzo, and disappeared through a double door. Claudia stood there, trembling, covered in sweat and tears, not quite understanding what she had just done. 2 hours later, a doctor came out. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes and a serious expression. "Are you the mother?" "No, I'm the family's cleaning lady." The doctor frowned, but didn't question it. This baby had a systemic infection. 10 more minutes and he would have gone into septic shock. "You saved his life." Claudia collapsed into a chair and wept. She wept like she hadn't wept since the day she lost her own daughter 7 years ago, in a premature birth that no one could prevent. She wept because Lorenzo's cry had awakened something inside her that was dormant, buried, locked away. When Vittoria Almeida arrived at the hospital 2 hours later, she found Claudia in the waiting room, huddled up, with her hands covered in blood. Lorenzo had vomited in the car, and her eyes red. "What did you do?" Victoria asked, her voice strangely calm. I saved your son, Mrs. Vittoria." Vittoria remained silent. Then, slowly, she sat down next to Claudia. And for the first time in years, that woman in high heels and expensive jewelry broke down. She cried, she sobbed. She gripped Claudia's hand, as if it were the last solid thing in the world. "I wasn't here," she whispered through tears. "I wasn't here. And if you hadn't... Claudia held her hand back. "But I was. And he's alive." That night, when Lorenzo was discharged from the hospital, Vittoria made an unexpected proposal. "I want you to live here, in the mansion. I want you to take care of my son, not as a cleaning lady, as someone from the family." Claudia blinked, disbelieving. "Mrs. Vittoria, No." Vittoria raised her hand. "You saved my son, and I saw the way you looked at him. I've never looked at him like that. I don't know how to be a mother, Claudia, but you do, you already were. Leave a like if you're excited, and keep reading because what happens next will turn everything upside down." Claudia accepted. She moved into the maid's room, which in fact was bigger and nicer than the house where she had lived before. She began to take care of Lorenzo full time. She would wake up in the middle of the night when he cried. She changed diapers. She gave him baths. She sang lullabies that her own mother had sung to her decades ago, and Lorenzo clung to her in a way that even scared Vittoria. He only stopped crying in Claudia's arms. He only slept if she was nearby. He only smiled when he heard her voice. Months passed. Lorenzo grew up, and Claudia, without realizing it, became the mother he never truly had. Vittoria remained his mother on paper, signing documents, attending school meetings, posting photos on social media. But the one who lived the boy's life, who breathed alongside him, was Claudia. Augusto, the father, noticed, and he didn't like it. "She's taking our son," he said one night after dinner, while Vittoria drank wine on the balcony. "She's taking care of him. Something we didn't do. Because we work, Vittoria, we build a future for him, and meanwhile, who is building the present?" The argument died there, but the seed of discord was planted, and Augusto began to observe Claudia with a different gaze, not of gratitude, of distrust. Lorenzo turned one. Claudia organized a small, intimate party at the mansion. Blue balloons, a simple cake, children's music. Lorenzo was in her lap, laughing, trying to grab the balloons with his chubby little hands. That's when Augusto asked in front of all the guests, "Claudia, tell me something. Do you have children?" The room froze. Claudia felt the blood rush to her face. "I had it. A girl. She didn't survive childbirth." "Ah." Augusto took a sip of whiskey. "So Lorenzo is like a replacement," Vittoria interrupted, furious. "Augusto, you're drunk." "No, I'm lucid. And I'm seeing a woman who clings too tightly to other people's children because she lost her own." Claudia stood up slowly with Lorenzo still in her arms. Her voice was firm but trembling. "You can think whatever you want of me, but this boy here, he knows who wakes up in the middle of the night when he cries. He knows who sings him to sleep. He knows who truly loves him." And he left the room, taking Lorenzo with him. Vittoria exploded. She yelled at her husband. She called him a scoundrel, insensitive, a man incapable of seeing what was right in front of him. Augusto stormed out of the house, slamming the door. That night, Claudia laid Lorenzo in his crib, sang softly until he fell asleep, and when she finally found herself alone in the room, she broke down. She cried until she had no more tears, because she knew Augusto was right, in part. She loved that boy as if he were her own, and that was dangerous. The next day, Vittoria called Claudia in for a chat. She expected to be fired. She expected to hear that she had crossed the line, that she needed to leave. But what Vittoria said was, "I want to adopt you as part of our family. Legally." Claudia blinked. "What?" "I spoke with lawyers. It can be done. You become, I don't know, the official godmother, legal guardian in case something happens to me and Augusto. I want you to have rights over Lorenzo, because you are his mother, Claudia. I'm just the woman who gave birth." If you're speechless, leave a like and continue, because the twist that's coming next is mind-blowing. 3 months later, the papers were signed. Claudia gained legal rights over Lorenzo. Augusto fought against it, but Vittoria was relentless. Either he accepted or she would file for divorce and take half of everything. He accepted, but he never forgave. Lorenzo grew up. At 3 years old, he called Claudia Mother Clau and Vittoria Mommy Vittoria. By 5, he no longer made a distinction. They were both mothers, period, and he loved them both in the way only a child can, with everything. But Augustus remained there, brooding over his anger, waiting for the right moment. And that moment arrived one Saturday morning, when Lorenzo was 7 years old. Claudia woke up and went to the boys' room. The bed was empty. Her heart raced. She ran downstairs, shouting his name throughout the house. Nothing. She went to the garden. Nothing. Then he saw the note, stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet. "I took my son to spend the weekend with me. He is my son, Claudia, not yours. Augusto." Claudia felt her legs weaken. She picked up the phone and called Vittoria. He took Lorenzo. Vittoria remained silent for 3 eternal seconds. Then, with an unsettling calm, she said, "He's not going to give it back." And in that instant, Claudia understood. This wasn't a stroll. It was a kidnapping. Augusto had waited years. He gathered evidence. He prepared lawyers. And now he was taking Lorenzo away forever. Claudia couldn't breathe properly. Her hands were shaking so much that her cell phone almost slipped from her fingers when she tried to call Augusto again. Call declined. She tried again. Blocked. Vittoria arrived half an hour later, disheveled, without makeup, something Claudia had never seen before. She burst through the front door like a hurricane, her eyes red, her voice shattered. He planned this. That bastard planned everything. What do we do? Do we call the police? Do we— No. Vittoria cut in dryly. If we call the police, he'll use that against us. He'll say I'm an absent mother, that you're an intruder, that Lorenzo needs his father. He has lawyers, Claudia, the best, and enough money to bribe any judge. So we're not going to do anything. Claudia felt her voice rise, desperate. Are we just going to let him take our son? Vittoria gripped her shoulders tightly. No. We'll go after it, but in our own way. They discovered, through a mutual friend, that Augusto had rented a house on the beach in Camboriú, 6 hours away. Vittoria called the house's landline. He answered on the third ring. What do you want, Victoria? I want my son back. Our son, and he's with me now, where he should always have been. Augusto, for God's sake, he's 7 years old. He doesn't understand what's happening. He understands perfectly. I explained to him that his mother and that meddling cleaning lady were taking over his life, controlling everything, and that now he was going to have quality time with his father. His voice was calm, cold, calculated. Do you know what he said? Okay, Dad. He didn't cry. He didn't ask for you, much less for her. The call has ended. Claudia collapsed on the kitchen floor. Vittoria stood there, frozen, her eyes fixed on nothing. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Only the sound of the wall clock, each tick like a hammer blow to the chest. He's lying, Claudia whispered. Lorenzo would never say that. I know. Vittoria wiped her face with the back of her hand. But that doesn't matter. Augusto will twist reality until Lorenzo believes it. If you have a lump in your throat right now, leave a like, because what happens in the next few hours will leave you speechless. They left that same afternoon. Vittoria drove. Claudia sat in the passenger seat, looking out the window without seeing anything, her hands clasped so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Neither of them spoke during the first hour of the drive. The silence was dense, heavy, almost solid. It was Claudia who broke the agreement. What if we get there and he doesn't want to come? Vittoria didn't take her eyes off the road. Then we'll drag it. Victory. I'm not going to lose my son, Claudia. Not to him. Not after everything. They arrived in Camboriú as the sun was setting, painting the sky orange and purple. The house was in a secluded area, far from the busy beaches, surrounded by high walls and an automatic gate. Vittoria parked outside and looked at Claudia. Ready? Claudia nodded, but she wasn't ready, not even close. They rang the doorbell. No one answered. They rang again. Silence. Vittoria started screaming. Augusto, open that door. I know you're in there. His voice came through the intercom, distorted but clear. You have no business being here. I want to see my son. He doesn't want to see you. Claudia stepped forward, pushing Vittoria aside, and shouted into the intercom, Lorenzo, Lorenzo, my love, it's your mother, Chloe. Are you all right? Silence. Lorenzo, please, answer me. More silence. And then, the voice. Tiny, trembling, but it was his. Mother, Chloe? Claudia started crying right away. Yes, my love, I'm here. Mommy Vittoria is here too. Dad said you weren't coming. Because we came, and we're not leaving without you. There was a long pause. Then, even quieter, almost a whisper, I'm scared. Claudia felt her heart shatter. Vittoria already had her cell phone in her hand, dialing the police, but before she could complete the call, the gate opened. Augusto stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his face a mask of disdain. Behind him, in the dim light of the room, was Lorenzo, tiny, pale, clutching a backpack. 5 minutes, Augusto said. You have 5 minutes. Then I'll call security. Claudia rushed in. She fell to her knees in front of Lorenzo and hugged him so tightly that he let out a muffled chuckle. Mum, Chloe, it hurts. I'm sorry, my love. I'm sorry. She kissed his face 1,000 times. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? No. But he said you didn't want me anymore, that you were tired of me. Vittoria approached and knelt on the other side. That's a lie, Lorenzo. We love you more than anything. Lorenzo looked at his father. Augusto was leaning against the wall, watching everything with a half smile. Did Dad lie? Yes, Victoria said firmly. He lied. Augusto stepped forward. No, I told the truth. You're all so busy, always neglecting me, always treating this boy like a trophy. I just wanted to give him what you never gave him, real attention. Claudia stood up slowly, her eyes fixed on Augusto. Attention? You barely know the name of his best friend. You don't know he's afraid of thunder. You don't know he only sleeps if someone sings Boy de cara preta. You don't know your son, Augusto. You just want to take him from us. Augusto took 2 steps forward. Now he was inches from Claudia. And you think you know her? You, who are just a maid? Who's here out of pity? I'm here because I love him. Something you'll never understand. Augusto's hand went up. For a second, Claudia thought he was going to hit her, but Vittoria stepped in front of him, her voice coming out as a low growl. If you lay a finger on her, I'll finish you off. And that's not a threat. It's a promise. Augusto stepped back, but the smile remained. You think you won? You think you're going to leave here with him? Let's go, Victoria said. She took Lorenzo's hand. Let's go. Now. But Augusto blocked the door. Not without a court order. You know from the front, Augusto. Or what? Are you going to push me in front of our son? Lorenzo started to cry. Softly at first, then louder, more desperate. Stop! Stop! Please! Claudia picked the boy up. Everything's all right, my love. Everything's all right. But it wasn't. And everyone there knew it. Leave a like now, because what comes next will keep you hooked until the very last second. It was Vittoria who made the decision. She picked up her cell phone, opened the camera, and started recording. Augusto Almeida, you are preventing your son from seeing his mother. This is parental alienation. It's a crime. Turn that off. No. And if you don't get out of the way, I'll send this to all the lawyers I know, and to the judge and to the press. Augusto turned pale. You wouldn't do that. Head. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Vittoria saw the opening. She took Lorenzo from Claudia's hand and ran. Claudia ran after her. Augusto shouted, tried to hold them back, but they were already outside, crossing the garden, the gate, the car. Vittoria started the engine. The wheels squealed on the asphalt. Lorenzo was crying in the back seat. Claudia hugged him, whispering that everything was all right now. But it wasn't, because Augusto was already in his car. He was already coming behind him, and the chase down the dark, deserted road, with no witnesses, was only just beginning. Augusto's car headlights filled the rear-view mirror with a blinding white light, making the night even more menacing. Vittoria pressed the accelerator, but his car was more powerful, newer, built for this. He was gaining ground. Claudia looked back. Lorenzo was pale, his eyes wide, clutching the seatbelt as if it would save him from something. She tried to smile, tried to sound calm, but her voice trembled. Everything's fine, my love. We're just going to drive a little faster, okay? Lorenzo didn't answer. He just looked out the back window and saw his father's car a few meters away. He's coming. I know. Vittoria kept her eyes fixed on the road. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her fingers were white. I know, Lorenzo, but we're not going to let him catch us. The road was a narrow strip of cracked asphalt that cut through a deserted stretch between Camboriú and the main highway. There was no lighting, no houses, no one, just them and him. Augusto's car accelerated again. It pulled alongside them. Claudia saw his face through the window, jaw clenched, eyes fixed, an expression of cold fury she had never seen before. He shouted something they couldn't hear. Then he did the unthinkable. He turned the steering wheel to the right. The impact threw Vittoria's car off the track. The wheels skidded on the dirt, raising a cloud of dust. Claudia screamed. Lorenzo did too. Vittoria struggled with the steering wheel, slammed on the brakes, but the car was already out of control. It spun once, twice, until it stopped sideways at the edge of a ravine. Silence. For a few seconds, no one moved. Claudia looked back. Lorenzo was crying, but he was unharmed. Vittoria had a cut on her forehead, blood running down her face. She wiped it with her hand, took a deep breath, and looked in the rearview mirror. Augusto had stopped the car on the road. He got out slowly, his hands in his pockets, walking towards them as if he had all the time in the world. "Get out of the car," Vittoria said, her voice hoarse. "Get out now, grab Lorenzo and run." Victory, I'm not going. Run, Claudia, I'll catch him. Claudia didn't have time to argue. She opened the back door, picked Lorenzo up. He was trembling, sobbing, and ran. She ran into the woods, tripping over roots, branches scratching her face, the weight of the boy in her arms burning her muscles. Behind her she heard Vittoria's voice. Have you gone mad? You almost killed us. I just want my son back. He's not just yours. He never was just yours. Claudia kept running. Lorenzo was so scared that he stopped crying. He entered that state of silent shock that is worse than any scream. She stopped behind a thick tree, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to explode. She put her mouth to his ear and whispered, We're going to stay quiet here, okay? Very quiet. Just until Mommy Vittoria sorts this out. Lorenzo nodded, but his eyes were glazed, distant. Claudia hugged him tighter. From afar she could hear the voices. Augusto and Vittoria were arguing. She couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. He was losing his temper. And Vittoria was holding the line tooth and nail. Then a sound that cut through the night like a blade. One shot. Claudia covered Lorenzo's mouth before he could scream. Her whole body froze. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. But it was. She had heard it. A gunshot. Loud. Dry. Final. And then, silence. She stood there, motionless, unable to move, unable to breathe, waiting to hear Vittoria's voice. Anything. A scream, a groan, any sign that she was alive. But what she heard was Augusto's voice. Calm, controlled. Claudia, I know you're there. Bring my son back. She didn't answer. She pressed Lorenzo against her chest, praying silently, begging him not to make a sound, that his breathing wouldn't give away where they were. Augustus's footsteps drew closer. Slowly, deliberately, he was hunting. Claudia, don't make this worse. I don't want to hurt you. I just want Lorenzo. He's my son. I have a right to him. Claudia looked around. The woods were dense and dark, but not dense enough to hide them forever. She needed to move, she needed to create some distance. But every step she took made a noise, dry leaves crackling, branches breaking. Augusto listened. Ah, so that's the way to go. Claudia ran again. Lorenzo clung to her, his little face buried in her neck. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she needed to get away. She needed to protect that boy, no matter what. Then she tripped. Her foot caught on a root and she fell sideways, shielding Lorenzo with her body. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she didn't scream. She just bit her lip until she tasted blood. He stood up slowly. Lorenzo was fine. Scared, crying softly but fine. And that's when she saw it. A house. Small. Old. Probably abandoned. But it had walls. It had doors. It had somewhere to hide. She ran over, pushed open the rotten wooden door, which slammed shut with a loud creak, and went inside. The smell of mold was suffocating. There was no furniture, no light. Just dust, cobwebs, and darkness. But there was a corner, and Claudia squeezed herself in there with Lorenzo in her lap, and stood motionless. Augusto's footsteps stopped outside. I know you're in there. Claudia closed her eyes. She prayed, she pleaded, she bargained with God, with the universe, with whatever was listening. The door creaked. Augusto entered. If you're trembling, leave a like. And stay tuned, because what happens now will change everything. He stood in the middle of the house, looking around. The light from his cell phone flashlight cut through the darkness like a blade, sweeping every corner. Claudia held her breath. Lorenzo did too. She could feel his little heart beating against hers, too fast, too desperate. The light passed close to them, so close that Claudia could see the dust dancing in the air, but she didn't find them. Augusto let out a long, tired sigh. Claudia, I know you think you're doing the right thing, but you're scaring my son, you're hurting him. Lorenzo trembled. Claudia squeezed him tighter, whispering in his ear, so low it was barely a sound. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Augusto took a few more steps. Do you think I'm the villain in this story? Do you think I don't love my son? I do. More than anything. More than you. Because you treat him like property. I treat him like blood. Claudia felt anger rising. She wanted to scream. She wanted to get up and strangle that man, but she couldn't. Because Lorenzo was there, and he was the only thing that mattered now. Augusto stopped walking. He fell silent, and then, with terrifying calm, he said, "Okay, do you want to play hide and seek? Let's play." He turned off the flashlight. Total darkness. Claudia couldn't see her own hand in front of her face. She could only hear Augusto's breathing, his footsteps, slow, calculated. He was testing the waters, listening for any sound that would give them away. Lorenzo started crying again, softly, but in the absolute darkness, even the slightest sound echoed. "There you are." Augusto turned the flashlight back on. The light hit Claudia squarely in the face. She raised her arm to protect herself, but it was too late. He approached. He stopped a meter away. "Give me my son." "No." "Give it to me, Claudia." "I said no." Augusto held out his hand. Lorenzo shrank back. "Son, come with Daddy." Lorenzo shook his head. "I don't want to." "Lorenzo, I don't want to go with you." The boy's voice came out in a high-pitched, sharp cry, full of fear. "You hurt Mommy Victoria. You're bad." Augusto turned pale. "I didn't hurt anyone. I just fired a shot into the air to scare them." Claudia felt a wave of relief wash over her. Victoria was alive. She had to be. But he couldn't let his guard down now. "If you haven't hurt anyone, then why are we here? Why are you chasing us? Why did you steal my son?" "Nobody stole anything. He chose. He always chose us." Augusto took a step forward. His hand went to his waist, and Claudia saw the glint of metal. The gun. He had a gun. "Last chance, Claudia. Give me Lorenzo, or I'll take him away from you." Claudia stood up slowly, still holding Lorenzo in her arms. The boy was trembling so much she could barely hold him. But she looked Augusto in the eyes and said, with a firmness she didn't even know she possessed, "You'll have to kill me first." Augusto clenched his jaw. His eyes blazed. Anger, despair, something bordering on madness. He raised the weapon, and that's when the door exploded. Vittoria burst in like a whirlwind covered in blood, but standing, alive, furious. She threw herself on top of Augusto before he could react. They both fell to the ground. The weapon slipped from his hand, sliding across the wooden floor. Claudia ran. She grabbed the gun. Her hands were trembling so much she almost dropped it, but she held on. She pointed it upwards, away from everyone, and shouted, "Stop! Stop now!" Augusto and Vittoria froze. He was on top of her, his hands around her neck. Vittoria was purple, struggling to breathe. "Let her go, Augusto." Claudia's voice was firm this time. "Let her go, or I'll shoot." He looked back. He saw the gun in her hand. And he laughed, a low, bitter laugh. "You don't have the guts." "Head." He released Vittoria. He stood up slowly, hands raised. "Okay, okay. You won." Vittoria crawled over to Claudia, coughing and panting. The two stood side by side, shielding Lorenzo with their own bodies. Augusto took a step back, then another. "But you know this isn't over, right? I'm going to sue you. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take my son away from you, even if it's the last thing I do." "Then try it," Vittoria said, her voice hoarse. "But until then, you don't touch him again." Augusto stood there for a few more seconds. Then he turned his back and left. They heard his car start. They heard him drive away. And only then, when the sound of the engine faded into the night, did Claudia drop the gun to the ground and collapse. Victoria did too. Lorenzo was between them, crying, trembling, but alive. They lay there, embraced on the floor of that abandoned house, while dawn began to break outside. Vittoria was the one who broke the silence. "We need to leave, now, before he comes back with reinforcements." Claudia nodded. They picked up Lorenzo and left. The car was dented, but it still started. Victoria drove. Claudia held Lorenzo in the back seat. Neither of them spoke the entire way. When they got home, it was almost noon. They locked all the doors and windows. They put Lorenzo to bed. He passed out from exhaustion in less than 5 minutes. And then, finally alone in the kitchen, Vittoria looked at Claudia and said, "He's not going to give up. You know that, right?" Claudia nodded. "I know. And we can't live like this, running away, hiding, afraid." "So what do we do?" Vittoria took a deep breath. "We'll fight. In court. In the media. Everywhere we can. And if he comes again..." She paused, her eyes hardening. "We'll finish him off." Claudia didn't answer, but something changed in her gaze too. Something that wasn't there before. Determination, anger, a desire to protect that boy at any cost. And in the weeks that followed, Augusto kept his promise. He filed a lawsuit. He asked for sole custody. He accused Vittoria of negligence. He accused Claudia of manipulation. He spread lies. He bought witnesses. But Vittoria and Claudia also fought. They hired lawyers. They presented evidence, recordings, photos, testimonies from doctors, teachers, neighbors, all speaking about how Lorenzo was loved, cared for, and protected by those two women. The case made headlines. It was in the newspapers, on social media. Some people supported Augusto, others Vittoria and Claudia. The whole of Brazil was divided, and in the midst of all this, Lorenzo, small, scared, being dragged to hearings, interviews with psychologists, endless sessions where adults asked him who he wanted to stay with. Until one day the judge asked him the question directly. "Lorenzo, do you understand what's going on here?" The boy, now 8 years old, nodded. "And do you know you have to choose between your father, your mother Vittoria, and your mother Claudia?" Lorenzo looked at the three of them. Augusto sitting on the opposite side in a suit, serious, Vittoria and Claudia on the other, holding each other's hands. And then he said something that nobody expected. "I don't want to choose. I want my father to leave." The courtroom fell into complete silence. The judge leaned forward, his eyebrows furrowed. "Lorenzo, could you repeat what you just said?" The boy swallowed hard, but didn't look away. "I said I want my father to leave. I don't want to live with him. I don't even want to see him." Augusto stood up from his chair, his face red. "Lorenzo, you're not thinking straight. They put that idea in your head." "They didn't put it." The boy's voice came out louder now, trembling but firm. "You're the one who did everything wrong. You chased us. You crashed the car. You pointed a gun at Claude's mother." Tears began to stream down his face, but he continued. "You scared me, and I don't want to be near you anymore." Augusto's lawyer tried to intervene, but the judge raised his hand, asking for silence. He looked at Lorenzo with a serious but gentle expression. "Lorenzo, I understand you've been through something very difficult, but are you sure about what you're saying? Because this decision is permanent." Lorenzo nodded. "I'm sure." The judge sighed, leaned back in his chair, and looked at the lawyers on both sides. "I'll need a few days to analyze all of this, but one thing I can say right now, I'm not going to force an 8-year-old child to live with someone she's afraid of." Session adjourned. The gavel's bang echoed through the room. Augusto stood there, pale, his fists clenched. Vittoria and Claudia exchanged disbelieving glances. They knew it wasn't over yet, but for the first time in months, they felt they had a real chance. Lorenzo ran to them. He hugged them both at the same time, his face buried between their bodies. "Did we win?" Vittoria kissed his head. "Not yet, my love, but we're close." Claudia looked back at Augusto. He couldn't take his eyes off Lorenzo. And there was something in that look that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't anger. It was something worse. It was the expression of someone who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. Leave a like now, because the ending of this story will make you believe that justice exists. 3 days later, the verdict came out. The judge granted full custody to Vittoria and Claudia, with one condition. Augusto would have the right to supervised visits once a month in a controlled environment until Lorenzo felt secure enough to change that. If he ever changed it. Augusto didn't accept it. He appealed. He filed a new lawsuit. He tried everything, but every door he knocked on slammed shut in his face. Lorenzo's testimonies, the recordings, the witnesses, everything was working against him. And little by little he disappeared. He stopped showing up for hearings, he stopped calling, he stopped trying. Lorenzo, who had nightmares almost every night in the first few months, began to sleep peacefully again. He started smiling again. He started playing again. He became a child again. Claudia continued living in the mansion, but now it wasn't as a maid anymore. It was as a mother. Officially, Vittoria had insisted on changing the documents, putting Claudia's name alongside hers on everything. Birth certificate, school, health insurance. Lorenzo had 2 mothers, and both loved him equally. Years passed. Lorenzo grew up. He became a teenager. He continued going to the cemetery. No longer to clean his grandmother Helena's grave because now he understood the whole story, but to talk to her, to tell her how his life had changed, how he had been saved. One day, when Lorenzo was 15, he was kneeling in front of Helena's gravestone when he heard footsteps behind him. He turned and saw a man, older, stooped, grey-haired. It took him a few seconds to recognize him. Augusto. He looked different, thinner. His face was marked. His eyes were sunken. He seemed to have aged 20 years in 5. Lorenzo stood up slowly. His heart raced. "What are you doing here?" Augusto didn't approach. He stayed a safe distance. "I heard you're coming here." I wanted to see you." "You have no right." "I know." His voice came out broken. "I know. I messed everything up. I was an idiot. I was a monster. And I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed to tell you that I'm sorry for everything." Lorenzo remained silent. Part of him wanted to scream, to curse, to tell that man to leave. But another part, the part that still remembered when he was little, when he sat on that man's lap and listened to stories, felt pity. "How you destroyed our family," Lorenzo said, his voice firm. "You almost killed the people I love most, and why? Because you couldn't stand the idea of not being the center of my life?" Augusto lowered his head. "I was afraid of losing you. And in the end, that's exactly what happened. You lost me the day you pointed a gun at Claude's mother." Augusto nodded. "I know." He took a step back. "I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know that I've always loved you. In the wrong way, in a selfish way. But I loved you." Lorenzo felt tears welling up, but he held them back. "I don't want your love. I already have love. Real love. From the people who stayed behind." Augusto stood there for a few more seconds. Then he turned his back and walked away. Lorenzo watched him disappear among the tombstones, swallowed by the thin morning mist. And she never saw him again. Claudia was in the kitchen when Lorenzo arrived home that afternoon. She was preparing lunch, humming softly, a song she used to sing to him when he was little. He stopped in the doorway, watching, and felt his chest tighten with gratitude. "Mother Cla." She turned around, smiling. "Hi, my love. How are you?" "Everything." He approached, hugged her from behind. "I just wanted to thank you." "Why?" "For staying, for fighting, for never giving up on me." Claudia felt tears welling up in her eyes. She turned, cupped his face in her hands. He was taller than her now and said, "I would never give up on you. Never. Because you are my son, and you always will be." Lorenzo smiled. "I know." Vittoria entered the kitchen at that moment, holding a shopping bag. She saw the two of them hugging and smiled too. "Oh, a family gathering without me." Lorenzo reached out his arm and pulled her into the embrace as well. The three of them stood there in the kitchen, illuminated by the afternoon light, united in a way that neither blood, nor paper, nor law could define. Because what united those three people was something greater. It was choice, it was love, it was struggle, and it was meant to be forever. This story shows that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by who stays, by who fights, by who loves. And sometimes, the people God puts in our path are exactly the ones we needed to find. Thank you for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to believe that love always wins. Always.